boys and girls, we are back on the Ultimate Sports Network talking real boxing talk, not real talking boxing or something like that. I've noticed someone else has a show that's similar to ours, but obviously isn't as good as ours. It's the same, almost the same title. So, because we thought long and hard about calling this show what we did, at least 3 seconds. Weeks, yes. Weeks it took us to name this show Real Talking Boxing, Talking, whatever it was. So we've had some interesting stuff happen in the last few weeks. We spent an inordinate amount of time last time on a fight that wasn't a fight. It was interesting what came out of that, but that wasn't, again, we never really planned what we're going to do. So, but it was good to have David Patrick on to give us some insight into that, but it was like, that wasn't the boxing we were going to talk about. So we have the aftermath of that fight, of the Errol Spence Jr. and Danny Garcia fight. So we'll get started with that. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hello there.
John, we'll start with you. What did you think of the approach of Danny Swift Garcia in this fight?
If you guys remember, I was saying that he doesn't fight with a sense of urgency. And that's just kind of the way he fights, though. So I knew, that's why I was saying that I thought if he brought it a little bit more like he did against Granados, but he was fighting a totally different guy too, in Errol Spence. Right. But I was thinking, I don't know, it's easy to sit there and be a Monday morning quarterback, but I was thinking, look, and this is how I think you got to think when you're a fighter is, look, this guy was in a horrific automobile accident. I'm going to really test his mettle in the first couple of rounds. I got to jump on his ass and start pounding and see what happens. And then if it doesn't work, I can go back to my counterpunching, which is what Danny Garcia is very familiar with, or very comfortable with. But instead, he just played his waiting game, and Errol Spence outworked him. It was simple as that. And Errol looked good. I was impressed. He looked pretty much like he did before. So, but Danny, who, I've a number of times joked around about his nickname, of course, not Swift. I just love having fun with that nickname because it's not true. But Errol Spence was impressive because his body work was right on point. His jab was excellent. But for a lot of people who picked Danny, and a lot of people had picked Danny Garcia, it went just pretty much the way we expected. You know what? Thinking back on when he fought Keith Thurman and when he fought Sean Porter, I think he brought more those fights than he did against Errol Spence. I don't know if it was too much respect. I don't know if he's lost a little at 32, but I just was, and his father kept trying to egg him on. Right. He kept trying to, come on. He was like stuck in one gear and couldn't get out of that gear. And if you're stuck in one gear, that means you're getting old, I think. He only had 35 fights, but we always forget these guys have been fighting since they're like 7 or 8 years old, and it just catches up with you eventually, especially when you fight a guy that outworks you and you can't pull the trigger. That great line from Joe Louis, I saw the opening, but I couldn't pull the trigger.
Right.
And I don't think that totally applies to Danny, maybe a little, but I just think his style just wasn't a good style matchup for him against Errol Spence Jr.
Well, there's a line from a U2 song, you get stuck in a moment that you can't get out of. And that's what it feels like. It's like, I just can't do what needs to be done.
Yes.
And maybe it's, like you said, maybe it's fear. Maybe you just can't pull the trigger. I don't know. Charles, now the CompuBox numbers were pretty much identical for the power shots, but Errol just out-jabbed him, outworked him from the outside. Explain kind of how that works out and how that gets you to the point where the fight's one-sided, even though power shots are about the same.
Yeah, but part of it is when you watch that jab, the jab goes a long way. And the jab, in fact, that's one of the main things Danny Garcia mentioned in his post-press conferences as well, that he just couldn't get past the jab. And Errol Spence was setting him up. He was more the aggressor early on, like in the first 5 rounds. And he would throw maybe one, he would set up his other shots with that jab. And part of the jab, which does not account to the power account numbers, is the jabs going to the body. He hit him with some serious body shots. And you can see Danny Garcia kind of wincing a little bit and keep getting backed up. And the game plan was pretty set. I think as you could see it, that he was going to be, that's Errol Spence Jr., that is, was going to go forward because he had seen what had happened in the previous fights that Garcia lost to Thurman and then also to Porter. Box, move forward, get ahead, and then you can coast. In fact, Errol Spence coasted so much in a couple of times that his coaches got on him like, hey, what are you doing? Because I think it's clear that he won the first 5 rounds, if not the first 6. He clearly won the rounds. And Danny Garcia's eyes were puffing up and whatnot. But that jab, when you come up, it's just always constant. And that's what Errol Spence Jr. was able to do. So granted, you mentioned about the power shots, but it wasn't about knocking him out. It was about being the more busier fighter and more dominant fighter. So the total accumulation of punches that land, including jabs, along with the power shots, is what people were looking at. And then, as you mentioned, his dad constantly just saying, come on, Danny, you got to throw your hands. And I kept watching them like, oh, well, here it is again. It's the 3rd consecutive fight where the same game plan is being used against him when he falls behind, because they know Danny Garcia is not going to be able to kind of come up. It's almost as if he needs somebody to stand right there until he gets comfortable. Then he wants to come up and punch.
Right.
But guys that move and guys that punch, guys that box are the ones that really have given them trouble. When I looked at it, I just kind of shook my head. I was like, well, maybe there's one fight that Danny Garcia could definitely win on the upper echelon, but it's not a higher end. I was like, well, we need to put Danny Garcia in the ring with Adrian Broner, because nobody would throw a punch.
Round 12. No,
they're still looking at each other.
Yeah. It's a dance recital. They're still moving around. Well, now it brings to mind something that I think is kind of interesting, John, that we've had a few fights in the last few fights we looked at that it's the guy comes out and takes care of business in the first 5 or 6 rounds. Even when we did the Pacquiao Marquez fight that we covered, there's only a few fighters that I can think of, and I'm going to think of one off the top of my head that can give away the first 5 or 6 rounds and still win a fight. The only one that really comes to mind that did it consistently was Bernard Hopkins. And I could be wrong about that, but that's the first one that comes to mind. It's like he didn't even try the first 5 rounds or so. I'm going to figure out what the guy does. I'm going to win it on the cards. I don't care if I get a knockout or not, but I'm going to win the last 7 rounds in the shutout or whatever, and it's over. Did that appear to be because of the counter-punching style of Danny Garcia, that he was trying to just figure it out, or he just got outclassed?
Well, real quick, the guy that popped in my mind is, by the way, the sparring partner behind me was hardly that, Jimmy Ellison. He was no southpaw. I have an article on him today, and he was really a good fighter. But Muhammad Ali did that later in his career, if you remember. He always fell behind. He fell behind against Ron Lyle. And it was close with George Foreman, right? He was behind against Ken Norton. And sometimes it was because as he got older, he just didn't fight. Jimmy Young, he didn't do a lot in the first few. He just kind of goofed around,
right.
And then he started coming on Leon Spinks. I think he was just outclassed, and it was too much. They were talking about how he needed to do certain things, and it's like trying to teach an old dog new tricks, trying to get him to fight a certain way when he's been fighting this way pretty much all his career.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. I mean, talking about another horse, like beating a dead horse. So he said himself that when he beat Granados, this is the way he was going to be from now on. He was going to be more aggressive. So he heard the criticism, obviously. He's going to throw more punches. But then he reverts right back to it in his next fight, waiting, countering. When you fight a guy like Errol Spence who's got a good jab and he's busy, you got to have a counter plan. Let's bring up our favorite guy, not the guy behind Charles there that we talk about a lot, but Sean Porter.
Ghost. Oh.
He always has the ghost, right? Sean, what I really like about Sean, he's always got a plan. When he fought Sean Porter, when he fought Spence, people were trying to figure out what he was going to do because he can box. He showed he could box, not just get next to you and pound on you and throw you around and be like, God, this guy's everywhere, right? He can do other things. And he did that with Errol Spence. He boxed him and then he rumbled with him. He moved away, and you could see Errol Spence was like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
the old line for Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. And I think when you get up into that echelon, you've got to have another plan. And I think element of surprise is always effective. So that's what I was thinking. I was thinking Danny's going to have to do something in the first couple of rounds to try to throw Errol Spence off his game a little bit to see, but he didn't. He just went, the first punch and the last punch of the fight were thrown by Errol Spence.
Right.
So I can understand it, like Charles said, Angel Garcia was trying everything in his power, but not only was he outclassed, it was like I said, he was outworked and Spence was busier. But Danny's a good fighter. You know, I might make jokes about his nickname and everything, but he is good. It's just he's one of these guys you're frustrated with because you're like, well, a lot of people were saying he just was collecting a paycheck. I don't believe that at all. I think he was in there to win. That's a ridiculous statement. But his style, that waiting style, like Charles said, Adrian Broder, they'd be waiting the whole 12 rounds. Be like, that's a minute to go and nobody's throwing a punch. What's going on? You know, it gets frustrating with those kind of guys because you know that's what they're comfortable with. But sometimes you got to get out of your comfort zone. My point is, you got to get out of your comfort zone, especially when you're fighting a guy as good as Errol Spence Jr.
And I think, and Charles, I'm going to let you run with this. We've seen Bud Crawford, we've seen Errol Spence in the last few weeks. Have they separated themselves, if they hadn't already, from the rest of that division?
I can see somebody saying that. Yes, I can see that. I think there's still a few people around that might have something to mention about that, but I can see them as being the class right now because, especially Spence Jr. From the standpoint, and I know I was watching something with Crawford the other day, and he says he is so tired of people saying he hasn't fought anybody at 147. And I'm like, okay, I won't say it, but but he's a hell of a talent. But yeah, I mean, right now I would say yes, but it still would be nice. Not saying you have to. It would be nice to see him in the ring with somebody else. But when you look at the competition and you look at Spence Jr., you look at the people that he fought. I mean, so he fought Porter. Nobody really wanted to Porter, right? Nobody really wanted to bang with Porter. He fought him. Then Danny Garcia jumps in there running his mouth. Oh, you think you're all this? I've been trying to get you. Okay, I got you now. And then it's like, okay, who's next? Is it Thurman? Why? And what's next? If you would think that is Crawford, but I've said all along, and I'll say it again, that I don't think Crawford has anything to prove for him to get a fight with Spence Jr. But if I'm Spence Jr., I'm like, you know what? Who have you beat at 147? I tell you what, show me that you're capable. Fight Sean Porter, and let's talk. I would do that just because he can. And no matter what Crawford says, there's no reasoning to say why he think he deserves a shot. To me.
But I guess, and I'm not going to disagree. I'm just going to throw another thing at it. I guess if I'm Bud Crawford, I'm thinking, why do I have to fight somebody you already beat? Do I have to go back to the division and start going through and culling through all the people? Because you already beat him. What does it prove to you or to me if I beat somebody you already beat? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to answer that. Well, I get what you're saying, but who have you beat at 147?
Sure, right, okay.
All I'm saying is, if I was Spence, I'll be saying, who have you beat at 147 to prove that you are worthy to fight me? And I know other people might see it differently, but it's almost in a way to me, and I don't want to put it down any other way. John, if I'm wrong, please help me. But here's my thing. It's almost as if Bud Crawford's a hell of a talent, right? He is. He's destroying people at 140. Then all of a sudden, it's like, you get a pass. Come on up to the front. Come on up to the front because he beat Kell Brook. Okay. But it's like, and I might just be holding on to this because I want to see him fight. I want to see him fight Porter. But if I am Errol Spence Jr., I'm like, what literally have you done to make me go, I should fight you, because except for everybody else wants to see that fight. And I would say, yeah, I'll fight you, but can we get a Thurman or even hell Pacquiao, which everybody wants? And that's a money thing. All I'm saying is, if I was Spence, I would say, why do you think you're worthy to fight me? And I'm the guy at 147.
Yeah, you know what? And Crawford is one of these guys that loses early rounds that we were just
Yeah,
talking about.
I thought about that as I said it, right.
Yeah, he's one of these guys. I from watching them, I hear you, Charles. I actually think Crawford, to me, is the most talented. He has the most talent as a fighter, but that doesn't mean that he beat Errol Spence, because that jab in his face all night, that rangy jab hitting him in the head over, that's going to be a problem for him if they ever fight. And I say if, because I don't know. I'm starting to lose hope that it's even going to happen. But of course, I would love to see Terrence in there with Sean Porter. But Frank's right too. He'd say, you know, he's already lost. I don't need to prove anything to you. Who are you? You know, I'm a champ too. I don't need to prove anything. Show it against me. That's what so because when he was there, they said, why are you here? And he goes, well, I want to see what all the talk's about. So we know that was about Errol Spence. He's doing actually what we were saying a few weeks ago, Bud is. He's talking a little more, and he's appearing at fights. I mean, he usually does anyway, but he's talking at the fights. So Aram with his whatever, his low-class crap that he threw at Bud Crawford, which I'm going to hate all my life, it might have worked a little bit because Bud is getting out there, and I think Bud realizes the shelf life on that fight is the door is closing. You know, they got a year or two tops, and it's going to look ridiculous if they don't get to it pretty soon. And boxing needs it. One last thing, boxing needs it badly. I think we need a super fight in 2021. We got the heavyweights maybe, but this would be a great fight between two undefeated welterweights.
Okay, this is where I look at the assistant that I don't have and say, you didn't do the research that I needed. But if we're looking at Terrence Crawford's record, or let's put it this way, his tenure at 147. And I agree with what Charles is saying, but it sounds like he came up to 147 6 weeks ago. How long has he been fighting at 147? It's been 3 years, hasn't it?
Has it been 3 years?
Pretty much.
I think it's been 3 years, yeah.
Can you tell me the box?
No, I can't. That's the thing. I can't tell you who he fought. I can tell you he's been at 147 for 3 years. That's about it.
But he fought, who did he fought? He fought
Mir Khan.
He fought Khan, he fought Horn. Okay.
He fought Horn, he fought Brook. That's 3.
Right, the great.
There's another one.
Okay. I guess my thing is, let me ask you this real quick.
Okay.
My thing is, they asked Errol Spence about him being at the fight, about about Crawford being at the fight. And Crawford and Spence said, I would never go to his fight. I would never go watch him fight. I don't need to. The only reason why I'm saying it is, when you saw the 3 belts across his chest, it's like, you got 1 belt. I got 3. And I mean, I think it will be a great fight. I think Crawford is a great talent. But I think nobody, we really don't want to admit, some of us do, but not everybody, that Aram is in the way.
Right.
He's in the way.
Right.
And
He is.
He's in the way. And I think that Errol Spence Jr. will fight him in a heartbeat. But the money has to be right. And Errol Spence Jr. like, it has to make money and it has to make sense. Like, I don't even talk about the guy behind me. Why would I fight you in front of 1,000 people? If I'm gonna fight you, I'm gonna put it all on the line when it matters. And I think that the pay-per-view has a lot to do with it, with the money. So why would you, as entertaining as it may be, with the pandemic going on like this, why would you lessen that fight because we want to see it so fast?
I'll just say this: with the internet gremlins we had for the last few weeks, Mr. Farmer now thinks he's a host of the show. So
isn't he?
He should be, because I'm not doing anything. Apparently, I wasn't needed anyway. But to your point, it's a valid point. You know, and I threw something out there because I didn't really do any research, and you said, well, yeah. So he's been a welterweight for 3 years, and And I went, there really isn't another side to that. So where we're segueing back to the previous thing, where we're looking at now, where do we go next with this? Because again, as we've said over the past year or so, the fight we want is not the fight we're going to get. I think we should realize that by now. And as you said, there's a certain 107-year-old man in the way that's not going to let that happen. The fight we want is not the fight we're going to get right away. They're going to build to that, and eventually it's going to happen in 2038 or whatever it's going to be. But what do we get now? Because what I'm hearing, there are 4 people in play, even though there are probably more because it's still a deep division. But we've got Errol Spence, we've got Terrence Crawford, we have Manny Pacquiao, who, by the way, is a champion in this division as well, and we've got Shawn Porter, who is making a living wearing some weird clothes at the fight, but making a living being the face of what's going on here. And it's one of the few people, and again, I'll go back in time to think of who the people I'm thinking of. He's making a living by being the stepping stone. If you beat Shawn Porter, you can be champion. It's not a championship fight when you fight Shawn Porter, but if you beat Shawn Porter, you can be champion. And that's where we're putting him out there to be. It's like, oh, and by the way, let's schedule you with Shawn Porter. Even though you lost to him, you lost to him, you lost to him. We believe he's still a quality fighter. I know he believes he's still a quality fighter. And I think the people that are making these matches believe he's a quality fighter. So, John, how would you segment this? Spence versus whom? Crawford versus whom?
Well, again, back to Charles. Shawn Porter, he's a former champ also. So he's not just a stepping stone. This is a former world champion to me. So he's the mandatory, as we were talking about. So if he says, I want to fight Terrence Bud Crawford, Bud ought to say, okay. Because that would take care of what we've been saying is Terrence doesn't really have a real name on his resume like that. So he could play Spence's game. He could say, okay, I'll fight him. And if I beat him, then you're going to fight me next. And I'm sure Spence would say, fine, as long as it's 60-40. That's what he said. Crawford got annoyed at that. But
oh, yeah.
He said 50-50. And I'm like, no, not 50.
You've got 3 belts. 50. I've got 1.
Yeah.
75-25. Yeah, or whatever it is. Yeah.
56-44, something like that. I don't know. But it would do a lot of good for Crawford. But, there's no guarantee that he even beats Shawn Porter.
Right.
That's the thing. That's why I don't like it with Shawn being considered like a stepping stone or whatever, because he's still damn good. And Terrence Crawford has never faced anybody like him. And it would be competitive because they're both super competitive. And yeah, I would love to see that fight. I would. I think that might be, or probably would be, a better fight than Crawford and Spence, because Spence would be sticking that jab in Crawford's face all night, and he'd have to figure out how to get away from it. And he might, because he switched to southpaw, start doing things, and he's a very, very intelligent in the ring. He figures out things. But Shawn Porter, he's motivated. See, there's a guy that I absolutely love because I love his desire. And a lot of people don't have that, and you can't help it if you don't have that. But Shawn Porter and his father, Kenny, who we got to have on one of these days, is great. They are so focused that I know, and you guys know, that Bud Crawford is probably thinking, do I really want to fight this guy? I mean, I do and I don't, because he knows that it's going to be hell. Not afraid of him, but he knows that. Ugh. But that is a tradition in boxing, even though we said, well, why would he want to fight him? That's what's happened in boxing over the years. If you go back, a guy beats a guy, and then the guy coming up, or the guy who's another champion, beats the same guy. And he says, well, I beat him too. And he says, you're just fighting my leftovers. Remember, it's the same old vernacular.
Right.
But I beat him. So that's a way to build it up. So if I'm Terrence, I'm thinking, look, Airman's going to get me in there with, well, maybe Manny Pacquiao, because Manny Pacquiao is being bandied about for Spence. Supposedly, Manny said he liked how Spence looked, and he wants to fight him. So that would mean Terrence would have to fight Sean Porter next. And hey, let's put it on the same bill now.
I was about to say that. Okay,
Yep.
here's where I think we're at now. Because part of what we've said any number of times is that there are too many belts. So if we were to eliminate the belts, just get that out of the way, and we're looking at and the old school way of thinking, Porter's lost what, 2 fights?
3, I think.
3 fights. Okay. The old school way of what we did was, hey, 3 fights is nothing. We don't care. Duran lost fights. Hearns lost fights. Hagler lost fights. We don't care about the losses unless you're getting into double figures now. And even that doesn't matter at some point if you fought enough fights. So we're looking at what is a good fight. Let's eliminate the belts. Let's eliminate the mandatory and waiting and all this other BS. And what's a good fight? And if you're out there as a matchmaker looking, what can we make as a good fight? Okay, Charles. And I think John hit on the head. What's the best fight out there right now that we can make? And if we can make Bud Crawford, Sean Porter, what keeps us from making it?
Well, I mean, I think that Bud Crawford wants Spence. He's always wanted Spence. He thinks Spence is the guy. Once Spence defeated Crawford, and really Spence has removed all of the excuses. He's defeated everybody. There's nobody that you say to yourself, oh, Spence should fight this guy, except for Crawford. And Spence, the way I like about it is he's already told you what he wants to do. He said, yeah, I want to fight Crawford, but I want to do this, I want to do that. And I'm even looking at Canelo. And it's like, look, I'm going to handle this and I'm going to move on because I want to continue to be great. But far as the fights that you really can make, I think Arum still causes a problem. I really do. Because I think the way Bud Crawford gets that fight, he's going to have to step up to him and demand that he negotiates and says, you work for me, I want that fight. But if you don't do that, because you're still in the contract, you don't want to tick anybody off, then your mandatory is Sean Porter. And I think that at first, because Sean Porter would always say that they were friends and they didn't want to fight and they never really talked about it. But now that he's the mandatory, it's like Sean Porter's like, when you even hear him talk, he said he was sitting at his house and he said, he never thought about it. And he started thinking when he watched the last fight that Crawford won, and then he started thinking about how he could possibly be the mentor. He said, I like him, but damn, I might have to fight that guy.
Sounds like him.
He said, I didn't think about it, but I might just have to fight him. And I like him, but I don't like him that much. But I will fight him. And just that mindset alone was like, wow. But I always thought it would make sense because of the factor that it would be a great way for Crawford to cement himself at 147. Not saying that he's not worthy, not saying he's not talented enough, none of those things. It's just one of the toughest fights that Errol Spence Jr. had was with Sean Porter. It was one of the toughest fights, and it took really until our 11th round where he kind of separated himself and showed you this is my situation. So, and the other thing, the cash cow is Pacquiao. Everybody knows that. It's legendary and it's a lot of money. So of course Spence would love that. But I would say right now, and if Crawford is the guy he say he is, you shouldn't have a problem fighting Porter. If you, as you say, Bud, and I believe it, you're undefeated, you're the guy, you say you're the truth, you're the future of boxing, you should not have a problem getting in with Sean Porter. I want to see it. It's a mandatory. It's easy to make. Why not?
Well, I get the sense that what we're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that Errol Spence Jr. views the welterweight division differently than Terrence Bud Crawford does. Bud Crawford believes he is on equal footing with everyone in the division, and he has earned the right to try and unify the belts. Errol Spence Jr. is looking at it going, I'm the best guy in the division, no matter who it is. They have to prove that they're worthy of fighting me. And I don't know, I may be reading too much into it, but that's what I see. I'm the top dog here. You may be talking about Crawford, but the way I see it, Crawford isn't any more worthy than Porter, than Thurman, than Garcia, than Pacquiao, than Brook, than any of these other guys until he shows me he's risen above that. So I'm going to keep fighting whomever I want to fight. And then he's going to have to prove to me that he's the next fight. I don't think anyone's ducking anyone. It just seems to me that Spence is saying, I don't need him right now. I need whomever else can get in the ring with me. It could be him, or it could be somebody else. He's not any different than the rest of them. Now, I don't know if I buy that, but I can see that that is his mindset. John, am I off there, or is that about close?
I think that's pretty close. Yeah, I think that's what he's thinking. That doesn't mean that he means everything he's saying, though. Because
Right.
if he beat Danny Garcia, he hasn't fought Keith Thurman, and Keith, as good as he once was, I don't think he's obviously as good as he was. Too many injuries, he's getting older. I even think his desire is lacking now. So he hasn't fought him yet. A rematch with Sean Porter. Again, there he is again. Sean would love it. Would Errol Spence want to get there and get down and dirty again? I don't know. That was a tough fight, and
Right.
you know he admitted that to people afterwards. He might not admit it because he doesn't want Sean Porter to hear it, but that was one tough. It was close until the knockdown. So yeah, he's saying, you're right, Frank. I believe he's saying, look, I'm the guy. I got the 3 belts. But then Terrence Bud Crawford is saying, look, I unified the junior welterweight division. It's not like I'm some bum who just moved up from the 140-pound division. I was the unified junior welterweight champion, and I won 1 title. I want to do the same in the welterweight division, and you have got all the titles. So if I'm such a pushover, what are you waiting for? You know, so that's the thing. It's okay, you know, okay. You're the top. You got all the belts. Fine, I got 1 belt. All right, well, right. I'm a joke. Then let's get it on. Let's fight. Let's find out. You know,
I'll trade
so
you my belt for your belt, right?
yeah, well, it would make things clearer, because if Spence beat Crawford, then he'd have 4 belts. And then the only guy left for him to topple was Pacquiao, and Pacquiao's going to be 42 maybe when they fight, which mind-boggling. But as we know, he looked good against Thurman, but then again, that might be the last time he looks good. So we don't know if at that level. He'll always look good, but fighting a guy at that level is always going to be tougher as you get older. But yeah, no, I think he's saying to everybody, look, I'm the guy, and you gotta come to me, you gotta show me something, or whatever I say you gotta do, then we'll talk. And then it's just like having a jerky boss, you know, who's saying, you do this, you do this, you do this, and you're going, yeah, you might think you're the boss, but you don't have a right to say those things to me. You know, I'm the guy that's doing this. I'm
Right.
And the boss is like, well, yeah, but I'm still a little above you. And you're like, you know what? You're a little above me as far as being a jerk too. So it's kind of like one of these kind of games. What are these little games going on here? And it's traditional in boxing. So, but right, for the 3rd or 4th time, I think you're pretty much onto something there, Frank.
Well, it had to happen at some point.
Eventually.
Now, we mentioned Pacquiao, Charles, and I'm not sure that I don't even know if there's a question to this, but he's still in the mix, and for good reason. Where does he fit? Or I guess better the question is, I think I'll come up with a question. Where should he fit in this whole puzzle?
Well, he's the golden ticket, right? Everybody would love to fight him. Everybody just calls his name out for 2 reasons. 1, because it means a big payday. And 2, you get to put that legendary name on your record, depending on how you defeat him, if you defeat him.
Win or lose.
Right. So you believe you're going to beat the man, finally put him out of his misery and put him out the pasture. That's what a lot of them are thinking, but it's a hell of a payday. That's why they want it. But I don't think Pacquiao is really pressed about it. You haven't really heard him saying anything. He's
Right.
just kind of enjoying the moment. If he figures it out, he will fight. There's no guarantee. I mean, sure, he will fight again, but he doesn't have to. I mean, he really did the ultimate by defeating Keith Thurman. And I think they're going to put so much money at him that sooner or later it's going to happen. And more likely it might be Spence, because you fight Spence, there's no shame in losing to Spence if you ride off in the sunset. But again, as you guys so greatly put together, if you beat Spence, you get 3 belts. So that if you're gonna take a chance, you say they're saying Porter, but if I'm gonna take a chance on being great, the great Pacquiao, why wouldn't he go after 3 belts? Particularly if Spence wants it. But I think you're right on point when you mentioned about how Spence views it to a little bit, because Spence reminds other people. When he was coming up, he told Keith Thurman, I'm here, I'm young, I'm hungry, fight me. And Keith Thurman, no, you're not, you need to put work in. And he ended up losing, and he clowned him. And now Keith Thurman is saying stuff and talking, nobody's taking him serious. So to Errol Spence's point, he has worked his way up.
Right.
Yes. And I mean, love it or hate it or whatever, it's the truth. And he is the truth. So he's worked his way up. And he's like, I've earned the right to do what I'm saying. And it's not like he fought, oh, let me fight Kell Brook again. Danny Garcia was running his mouth. He took care of him very easily. Now it's like, okay, what do I do? So, but I mean, overall, I think you're right on that point. I still think whoever gets Pacquiao, they cash in their golden ticket. I do think it may be Spence because of what Pacquiao looked at, and if you're gonna take a chance, why not go for 3 and the big money as well? And I think Crawford, no matter what, even though he wants it another way, and 2, let's be real, if he was with PBC, it'd be a lot easier to make that fight. That's the other thing.
Oh, definitely.
That's the other thing that's kind of in the way, because negotiating with Mr. Arum is going to be one thing. So again, as much as I like Bud Crawford, and he says he's the guy, and you want to prove it, like Sean Porter, prove it. He should not be a problem. Here's my thing. Early on, I think it would be a problem when he was not the mandatory. I get that. Now he's your mandatory. He's your mandatory. So it's a guy, instead of going off fighting, no disrespect to Kell Brook or Amir Khan for the second time, or somebody else that nobody really is taking seriously, or fighting Adrian Broner, right? Why not get in there with somebody that is legitimate and people respect?
Well, and I think that we've touched on something that I don't think we brought up before, because we keep jumping around with it here. As far as Pacquiao being the golden ticket, it just occurred to me. Well, yeah, it's the money aspect of it for one thing, but because of the career that he's had, I should say, losing to Jeff Horn and coming back and winning that fight, the second fight, if he didn't lose the first fight, that's irrelevant. But the fact that he came back and took care of business. Taking care of business against Keith Thurman at the age of 40. At this point, almost like it was with George Foreman, I don't think there's any shame to losing to Manny Pacquiao, because we just keep heaping onto the legendary whatever it is and go, well, but he's the legend. He defies odds, defies age, blah, 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 blah. Go fight Manny Pacquiao and get paid. If you lose to him, I don't think it puts you behind anybody right now. I really don't. And like I said, it just occurred to me while you guys were answering those questions. But I think that if you're Spence, or if you're Porter, or if you're whomever, Bud Crawford, whoever, and you've got a chance to fight Manny Pacquiao at this point, go do it, because it's a win-win. If you win, you win, and you slayed the dragon, and you got paid. If you lose, well, you lost to the legend, and fairy dust and whatever, you're supposed to lose to him, I guess, and you got paid. So, and John's sitting there going, maybe, okay, weigh in, please.
Well, you're basically right. And if you look at from Pacquiao's point of view, if he thinks that he can beat Spence, which he does undoubtedly, he's thinking, would this be the coolest way for me to go out? I win all the belts on one night, and then I say,
and I throw them away as I'm walking out of the ring. Right.
I mean,
Thank
that
you.
is a
Boom.
legacy,
Mic drop.
right? That is
Sure.
a legacy that will live forever. I mean, the guy's already an icon, obviously. He's so impressive. And it's his age. That's why we're all like, wow, that he's sure George Foreman did that. Now, heavyweights can usually fight longer at an older age and do well. Littler guys don't usually are able to do, especially the real small guys, and then moving up like he's done. I mean, he's an amazing story. So he's looking at it from that point of view. And Spence is thinking, oh, I got an answer. You want the truth? You want the answer? I got it. I know how to beat him. I think he knows how to beat him, and I think he would. I'll just say it right now. I think he would beat him. He's too big. He's younger. But Pacquiao has a little edge in speed. So I'm going to be on the fence here. So he's thinking, I'm still, even at 42, I'm faster. I think I'm faster than Errol. So I can pop in and out, like he's known to do. Mm-hmm. So that makes it very intriguing. What do you want to say, Frank? Go ahead.
Well, I'm thinking that if, let's say it's Errol Spence, let's just say, and I lose to Pacquiao, I don't lose faith, because like you said, Pacquiao's going to take the belts, get a photo op, and then drop them and walk out the ring. I've got the belts, I don't care. And then Spence can be the next in line for the vacant belts.
Frank, he would lose face if he lost to Pacquiao. He lost to a 42-year-old guy who the guy behind Charles beat a number of years ago.
Well, yeah.
Easily. So he would lose a little face, because that's how it always is when you lose to an older guy. He's not even as good as he once was, and you lost to him. You know how it is in sports. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But he had the bum shoulder, and he was worried about becoming president of Venezuela or whatever he's supposed to do.
Sure.
Right. Yeah. But it again, I think at this point, and like I said, this thought just occurred to me, and I'm sure you're right that if you are the king of the division, you can't lose to Manny Pacquiao. But if you're anybody else, I think it's not going to tarnish where you're at.
Yes.
Plus, after the fight, you can go by Canada if you want to. So you've got options at that point. Now, we're, as we were talking about, and I don't have a good segue to this. Sorry about that, folks. I'm usually much better at this. But as we're talking about making moves or moving whatever we're looking at, we have a fight coming up this weekend that might be important in the way the heavyweight grand sphere of things are. Charles, we're looking at Anthony Joshua, and we know that the Fury Wilder thing is up in the air. What does Anthony Joshua have to do to be whatever? Does he have to do anything other than just win the fight this weekend? What has to happen?
I think if he just wins, I think he's still in a good place, right? I think he just has to get the victory. But if he wants to cement himself as a serious contender, kind of controls the part of the heavyweight division, if he wins very impressively and stays consistent, I think a lot of people will call for him to get that shot versus Fury or whomever. And that way he doesn't have to be rushing. But if he gives a mediocre performance, or let's say if he loses, I think he goes back down he's going back down the chute, going back the other way. But if he wins convincingly, like he's able to do against in his last fight in the rematch when he got his belts back anyway, that he does that and just comes up and is impressive, I think he can sit back and just kind of cross his arms and wait to see what happens. Because then he's still in the picture. People are still going to be buzzing about him, saying he has his flair back and he's legitimate. He deserves it. So I think that's what he needs to do. He needs to be impressive as much as possible. A knockout would be nice, but if not, he just needs to be quite dominant, and then let the chips fall where they may. And they are going to fall in the heavyweight division soon.
And John, I'm going to ask two questions here because I actually thought of two questions, which is rare. One, I think we forget A, how many belts does Anthony Joshua have? And then B, he's not fighting chopped liver here.
No, he's not.
So let's give a little background on both of those, if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, he lost, was it three belt and the ring belt to Ruiz, and then he won him back. So he is, other than Fury, he's like Spence and Bud Crawford in the sense he's got almost all of the belts except the one that Fury's got. So in a way, in a sense, he's the man, but see, then again, he's not the man because he lost.
Right.
And Fury won very impressively against Wilder. So in a way,
and let me interject real quick. Fury didn't lose the belts; they were taken from him.
Right. When he went in that self-destructive thing. Yeah,
right,
exactly.
Right.
He never lost any of it in the ring. That's right. That's very true. That's a good point. So Fury is looked at as the man for that, and for the reason that Joshua, the guy he's fighting has only lost to Klitschko. He's 28-1. He's got heavy hands. He's slow, but see, there's always going to be question now for Joshua as he moves forward is about his chin, or he got hit here against Ruiz. He's fighting a guy who's slower than Ruiz and doesn't have as fast the hands. So what I'm wondering about is which Joshua do we see this Saturday?
Right.
Do we see the one that's moving around like against Ruiz in boxing, which he lost weight, he got rid of some of his muscle mass so he could move easier, and he did it? Or do we see the older Joshua who's not, I wouldn't say plotting, but he's rumbling and he wants to rumble and yeah, and he's right. So he's more one-dimensional. I'll just say that. He wants to take the guy out impressively. Now that's riskier because he could get hit, and that's what makes it interesting. And if he gets hit, this guy can't punch. That's why you say you're not chopped liver. So I would call Joshua still at this point kind of he would hate this if I said it, but a fragile champion. That's what because he hasn't proved anything he has proved things, but I just wonder about what happens again.
Right.
It's always going to be a wonder about him. Even when he's fighting a guy that everyone, and Eddie Hearn, is praying every night that he beats, because supposedly they've already got the contracts all ready to go for the big one against Fury next summer, when everything will be pretty much, and it'll Wembley be 100,000 people for that one, and we'll all be going crazy waiting for that one. So yeah, it's always, there's always going to be suspense with him because of what happened moving forward. So that's what makes it interesting this Saturday.
Well, Charles, it always scares me when, and we were talking off the air about having a plan and the plan not always coming through and being able to make adjustments. Some of us do that better than others. But when this is planned out for how the heavyweight division is going to be taken care of in the next 6 to 8 months, and we're assuming contracts are already signed and all that, we've done everything but get there. And now this is the first step. It always scares me when the first step has nothing to do with the rest of the steps. This fight has nothing to do with Joshua Fury other than Joshua has to win the fight. Is it possible that A, he looks past this fight, and B, maybe he's in a position that he didn't earn, as we were talking about Errol Spence did, that since he didn't really earn this spot, does he not deserve to be lined up to where he's going to go? What does he have to do in this fight to be able to make it happen?
Wow, that's a lot. Anyway, but that's a lot.
He's reading off a teleprompter, Charles. That's how he comes up with these things. So
my assistant came back.
But I mean, when you look at Joshua, it's very important for him to win, because if he falls back like he did against Ruiz, then the point is that he clearly does not deserve to be there. So I think whoever is in his corner or whoever his promoter is, he said Hearn is telling him, hey, we need to be ready to get this because everything is wide open. You win this, you take that next step. Because truth be told, there were some naysayers, me anyway, that were kind of thinking in the first place when Joshua had the belts, did he really earn them? Like again, who did he fight? Right. So that was my question early on. But now you came back, you redeemed yourself, you won the fight, you calculated how to change your strategy, you beat Ruiz, and now it's it's wide open for him. It's a wide open path. Unless Wilder comes up with a crazy lawsuit, I don't think that's going to happen. But the path is wide open. So if he's serious and he says he's the guy, he wants to prove he's the guy that we think he is and the best boxer, then handle the business. There's no other excuses. He shouldn't come in saying he's wearing a headdress that's too big, or he lost too much weight, or he was
poisoned.
Poison, or he got a bad batch of government cheese or something to that effect. I mean, this is why
trunks were too heavy.
Right. This is the opportunity for Joshua of a lifetime to prove who he is. The money is there, the contracts are there. If he was able to get that fight with Fury and he beats Fury, then he automatically becomes the guy. He's the man on top of the mountain. So it's up to him as the fighter. And the question you have to ask yourself is, as a casual observer looking from one side to the next, I'm asking myself, how bad you want it? Because the only person standing besides his opponent, the only person that's standing in the way of his true opportunity for success is Joshua. And my question is, if somebody showed you something, you have opportunity, they open a path for success, it's all about intestinal fortitude. How bad you want it, and what are you willing to do to get it done? As we say in basketball, you can do it, as the young kids like to say, I crossed you up, where they crossed you over and they might have you on what they call on skates, or your other person, defender, standing over here. But if you don't score the bucket, you fail to finish.
Doesn't make a difference.
So the question is, Anthony Joshua needs to finish. He needs to finish the deal so he can move on and enjoy the riches of the heavyweight boxing division.
Now, we always talk about back of your head stuff. And I'm looking for the timeline here. Again, if my assistant were working, my assistant could actually figure this out for me. Let's look at the timeline of this and see if I can figure this out. Joshua has the belts because they were taken away outside the ring from Tyson Fury. He loses the belts to Andy Ruiz Jr.
Oh, and he beat Klitschko. Don't forget, he beat Klitschko.
He beats Klitschko, right. Yeah. Okay, so
wait.
So
Fury beat Klitschko.
Right. Fury beat Klitschko.
Joshua defended against Klitschko, and that was really his biggest name on his resume when they fought each other.
Okay,
and he won the belts.
Okay, so when he reclaimed the belts from Ruiz, did Ruiz? I know there was probably an immediate rematch clause in the fight and in the contract. I get that, but who else could Ruiz have fought at that time other than maybe Wilder, right? Or maybe Dillian White, because Fury was still out of commission at that point, wasn't he?
Well, he was coming back at that point. Yeah, he was. Yeah. Right. But yeah, he wasn't really right.
Wasn't at that level yet.
No.
So if we're looking in the back of our heads, if I'm Anthony Joshua, with all that's going around and all that's swirling out there, the fight I can hang my hat on is the Klitschko fight, and that's it.
Yes.
And we really don't know how much of Klitschko was left at that point. As we've gone through the years, we know they've been suspect if you can hit them. The problem was being able to hit them. Well, I'm not saying it was one lucky shot, but you're able to get inside and penetrate all that defense. And then the Klitschkos are known to maybe not be as Charles said, is mentally tough throughout a tougher fight than that. Not a knock. It's just, hey, they're world-class athletes, and that's kind of how they perform in that spot. So if I'm Anthony Joshua, and as we were talking about, he's maybe thinking the whisker's a little suspect, and Pulev lands one on him, where does Anthony Joshua, does he have a reservoir to dig to? Because it's all laid out, but it's one shot away or one scare away from it going away. John, is this are we entering something where it could be really a tougher fight than we might have on paper because of all this other stuff?
Yeah, and his other win when he knocked out Dillian White, that was also and if you guys have never seen that fight, that was really a good fight because Joshua got wobbled and then he came back and knocked out White. And him and White had known each other for a while, and there was a lot of bad blood in that one. So that was good. The other thing too, Frank, is this leads a little into your comment. I think you're talking about the head. Even in the rematch with Ruiz, it almost looked like if Ruiz was to catch him again, that would be it. He looked good, but then he looked shaky in some ways, you know. And when he got on the ropes, you could tell it was almost like it wasn't like when Muhammad Ali used to get on the ropes. He'd, be doing all. He looked panicked, like don't hit me, because your hands are so fast, I can't deal with it. It would be like that, playing anybody in sports. They're quicker than you. That's very intimidating. You do your quick move, and the guy goes, "That it." That you don't want, and then he does it, and you go, "Geez, I didn't even see it." Like Timmy Hardaway when he used to do that crossover back in the day, remember? And he'd leave guys like, "What did he just do?"
They're still guarding the air, right?
Exactly, but the point is that he looked vulnerable. Is the word I'm looking for against Andy Ruiz, and he did not want to have his back against those ropes. It's meant like. Back on the ropes, and it was like, get off those ropes, get off those ropes. So I thought that was very revealing of where his mind is. So I'm going to throw something out not wilder. I'm going to throw something crazy out there and say, I think Joshua's already looking at the end here. I think he's thinking I beat Pulev, which I should. I'm going to fight Fury. I might end up fighting him twice. Who knows? But I'm going to make so much money against Tyson Fury. I'm going to be set. My kids are going to be set. Their kids are going to be set. Everybody's going to be set. So the point is it's a segue to your first question, Frank. All the pressure is on Joshua this Saturday. He has to win this fight. And if he wins by decision, fine. But he's going to want a stoppage. And Pulev knows that he's not going to win a decision in England against Anthony Joshua. Right. He's going to have to knock him out to win. So, this is a little iffy. Not iffy. It's a bit of a risk, I should say. But Joshua should do it. But if he gets in against the ropes again and looks a little nervous, I will immediately think, since I consider myself an amateur psychologist, I will immediately think that he's already got a little doubt in here.
Right.
And he's like, I don't want to be there. I don't want to be there. No way, no way, no way, no way. So, and then he might go back to playing. See, one more thing about Joshua that bothered me was if you watch the Ruiz fight, it was like he was almost robotic when he got in trouble because he was asking his trainer, well, what do I do? What do I do? And I'm thinking, my God, you've had so many amateur fights
by now, right?
Pro fights. I think you should have an idea. Now, he might have been concussed. I'll give him that. But look, again, I always bring this guy up, and I know it's either Floyd or Muhammad, but Muhammad Ali got wobbled. He got buzzed, but he had a plan. He would think of something. I don't know if Joshua has that ability. Nothing personal. So I think you're either born with that or you're not. But if something happens that's like this show, right? We're so scripted, right? The minute we go off the script, we're in trouble. And that's what has me wondering about if he gets wobbled or gets knocked down. So will he be able to do what he did against Dillian White and Klitschko? Is he that same guy? I don't know, because that loss to Ruiz, that was devastating.
Well, Charles, it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, if this is not the right thought, but I think that Anthony Joshua knows he's won this fight because other things are set up, and he won't know he's in a fight until he steps in the ring.
Yeah, I mean, you have to get hit, and then you realize that what's going on. But if I'm Hearn, if I'm his trainers or whatever, The one thing I'm doing, because in the back of his mind, as you said, it's like he's seeing the future. He knows I win this, I'm all set up. We're paying for futures of kids and kids and kids and all that stuff. If I'm his folks in his corner or in his camp, before, if they haven't done it before, they should have done it, should do it now. I'm pulling out an old VCR tape or whatever or something, and I'm showing him the fight against Ruiz when he lost. I'm showing him that fight.
This could happen to you again, right?
We're not going this way. We're not letting this happen. You're a better fighter than him. You've been trained a certain way. It's a mindset. Oftentimes it is. John mentioned it too before. It's a mindset. So the mindset is he's in our way. And I used to tell kids this all the time where you kids will have issues when I'm coaching basketball. And I was telling them, I said, they're trying to take something from you. If somebody's taking from you, you shouldn't let that happen. And I used to tell them, if somebody came in your house and was stealing your father's candy or your father's items, are you going to stand there and just let it happen? Or are you going to fight back and tell him that's not yours? He has to believe that. He's in the way. It's like anything else. The mindset, I tell him, your mindset is everything. It's a mindset. You are in my pocket trying to take my money. I got to eat. My folks got to eat. Everybody's counting on me. As much as I might like you or I might not dislike you, when you're in my pocket, it's a problem. And I think he has had that mindset of, this is everything I work for. It's right in front of me. No one can get in my way to stop me from doing that. And that's it. And sometimes if that's the risk, he takes a chance to get knocked out. It's worth every penny of it, every part of it, because you laid it on the line and you told yourself, I'm not afraid. I'm willing to fight for what I believe in. And if you lose, you're a man's man. You get put out on the line. But if he goes and entered being nervous and scared and that whole discombobulation of thinking, then it's a problem because you were set up to fail anyway.
And if he goes in with the right mindset, we're going to Sizzler. Okay, now we have another fight on that card. Yeah, I know. We have another fight on that card, which we've been bemoaning this division. And I'm not even going to try and pronounce the names. I'm just going to go over this real quick. There's a cruiserweight fight that's a title fight on the same card. And this is the problem that we've been talking about, that it's a division that gets no respect at all, even though we've talked about it. I don't think we've given any respect either. And we're adding another division on top of that. And I don't get it. There's not much else I want to say about it. I just wanted to bring that out to people's attention to understand we still don't, or at least I still don't understand what the cruiserweight is, and then the next whatever division is going to be after that. So that's just weird to me. And another fight that's going on Saturday night is Shakur Stevenson. And this is kind of an interesting thing because we talk about Shakur Stevenson as if he should be getting title shots. And this obviously is a 6-round, 8-round fight?
10 round. I thought it was 10. And remember, he
10
does
round?
have a title.
Okay.
I don't know what he does have
Right.
a title.
Yeah. So this is an old school. I'm just going to keep busy. I need to fight. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Charles, when we're looking at this kind of event, shouldn't we be seeing more of this, you think? Look, I just want to fight. Don't mess around with contracts, this and that. This guy is, we've all said, the future or part of the future of the landscape of boxing. He just wants to get out there and rumble. Isn't that a good thing? That's
a great thing because he wants to stay sharp. It's not always about how much money I want to make. He knows he's a future champion. He is the future of boxing to a point. So if you can sit around and wait and hope somebody brings something your way, and who knows how long that's going to be, then let's say an opportunity to fight somebody really talented, another marquee talent comes along, but you've been on the shelf for 10, 12 months.
Right.
And Shakur Stevenson's coming out like, I don't care. I'll fight somebody else. He was even willing to make a substitution for somebody. He wants to fight. I love his spirit because as a fighter, that's what he wants to do. And I think more people should do that. But it, again, as you mentioned before, it comes down to money, contracts. I can make a lot more money if the fans are coming back. When are the fans coming back? Shakur Stevenson said, I don't have time for all that. I need to be sharp. I want to get my shot. I don't know who it's going to be against, but I'm ready. I love that attitude. Yeah, because they were like, well, even with Bob, because Beachwood top ranked, Bob Arum and those guys were like, we're going to bring you along a little bit. He's like, dude, I need to fight. See, that's what I'm talking about. I think that's where you let the promoter know, I need to get in the ring and I want to fight. So I think that's him pushing leverage because they didn't have him on the schedule to really fight for a while. But he's pressing the envelope to go, I need to be in the ring. And I think that's what makes champions.
And speaking, and we're going to go the segue right here. You mentioned money, and we see the man with no name behind Charles there. John, just explain to me what's going on with this, whatever it is, with Mayweather and YouTube dude and all. This is something that we brought up the last couple of weeks, and we were afraid that this could be the future of what's going on, and it's already started.
Yeah, and real quick, also remember that Shakur has that other guy that I like to talk about, Andre Ward, as his co-manager.
Sure, his
Andre
mentor, right?
is a very smart dude, and he knows how to bring a fighter along, and he knows that keeping him busy is very important. So you know that, and I think he can say to Bob Arum, right. You're going to put him in with these guys, and we're not going to pussyfoot around here like you've done with other guys. We're going to do this. And I think Bob Arum would go, okay, champ, we'll figure something out.
Yeah, we won't mess with you, right?
Right? Crawford doesn't have anybody really in his corner like that can throw his weight around or whatever you want to call it. Well, money against what? Jake Paul, I guess, the guy. Money's going to make more money, and I don't know. I don't know. Charles, maybe you can answer this better than me. I'm a little surprised. I mean, I understand he can make as much money as he wants. He went to Japan a couple years ago and knocked out some little guy in about a minute and made a bunch of money. That's fine. That's the American way. You know, I don't have a problem with that. It's just that when he does something, it always generates a lot of interest. And you know they're seeing the numbers. You know that I read today that Tyson Jones made $80 million.
Yeah.
And that it wasn't 2 million buys, I guess originally it was 1.6. What really is bad is, to me, is that it's making the important fights look like they're nothing. So you're putting on these circus shows and they're just whooping, like Santa Cruz and Gervonta Davis, a fight we talked about, at 220,000 buys. And those are two legitimate champions and everything. Right. So we like the old timers, obviously, but then again, I don't want to stop them doing it. But is it a reflection of how, I hate to say this, how weak it is right now in boxing as far as fans, that they really want to see the old guys get it on? I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with the Jake Paul. I mean, Jake Paul's a lot bigger than Floyd Mayweather, but you know, Floyd Mayweather's got a lot of pride. He's got a plan. Yeah. He's got time to get ready. He might be 43 now.
He'll be in shape, right?
He'll outbox him and do whatever he's going to do, and he'll make a bunch of money. And I don't want to think that he's doing it just for the money, that he's getting a little low of money. Maybe he is. I mean, he lives well, but whatever, he's got a right to do it. My concern is always how this can have an adverse effect on boxing, and that's why we were talking about Tyson and Jones. You know, Tyson and Holyfield is being talked about now. It's going to turn into a thing where those fights, people pay a lot of attention to those fights, but when we got a real important fight, like even Errol Spence and Crawford, if it ever happens, people are like, yeah, that's good, but I'm more excited about Tyson and Holyfield fighting the next month, and you're like, ooh, that's a scary thing, you know.
Well, I'm going to end it on this. I'm going to ask one question, the same question to both of you. Start with Charles. That And it just made me think of, we're so used to, I don't know about used to, but now we're seeing fights without fans. And this is a universal thing, obviously. But it seemed to have gone on pretty well. Now we can hear stuff that maybe we didn't want to hear as far as the corners are concerned, and blah, 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 blah. We don't have to worry about somebody coming in wearing a 50-pound headdress now. Maybe that's kind of stuff will go away.
I mean, 50 pounds, 100.
Oh, 150, I think is what it was. But
Right.
Are we to the point, or is it just because of the situation we're in, where, because as Charles, as you said, it's not like a lot of people go to a fight anyway.
Yeah.
You know, are we to the point where we might just start putting on fights without fans once we're able to come back?
No, they prefer the fans there, man. The whole point of having the fans is there, as you mentioned, and we mentioned before, that there's not, when you would think about the total capacity, it's not like it's 100,000 people watching a fight in person, right? But when you have, and that's the beauty of it. And I think they do that on purpose. So you go to a MGM, what is it, 17, John? 17, 19,
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
13, whatever it is. So only so many people can get in, right? It's a hot ticket. You want to be there. But if you can't be there, you'll pay for it. That's the lure of it. So to say, are we just going to keep moving along and maybe you have 1,000 fans? No, that's not how you make money, because the more people that are at the fights that have that golden ticket in their hand makes other people want to get in and do the pay-per-views and go to Las Vegas and do that thing. So with that being said, I think that's what happens. But I think the other part of it too is you have three different streams of money, right? You had the promoters, if a guy's promoting his own fight, you had the tickets, right? And then you have pay-per-view. And they want to get paid on three different ways if they're doing it the right way, the way that somebody behind me kind of started the whole thing going on. So now people are creating their own production companies. But I do think the fans are vital because it drives up and it drives up the attention. It drives up a way to keep the so-called circus stuff we're seeing now on the sideline, right? Because if people on the so-called circus, all they're doing is just pay-per-view. And that's where they're killing you at right now. I think part of it is, that's why you need the fans to come back to regular boxing. And last but not least, I'll say this, in order for boxing to continue to say, we're the main focus, the circus is a circus. You want to watch the retreads or whoever, older guys, drop that money, but watch us too. So now what the promoters, I think have to do is you got to build up your undercards. You just do. You have to build them up. So why in the hell, if you're going to have a big fight coming up, let's say Porter Crawford, right? We just talked about that. What the hell is Erickson Lubin, right? There's a lot of under things that can be right up under there. Boom, boom, boom. So I'll put my money down. I got 3 quality fights. You go there, you go to 130, 135. There are guys that are not champions. We just talked about Shakur Stevenson. Build those undercards. Make me go, oh man.
Right.
Hey, did you see that card last time? They're going to have to build it that way if they want to stay relevant and keep that money flowing compared to the circus.
Well, and one thing that they're doing now, which I don't understand, and maybe, I mean, I understand it, but I don't understand it, is they'll show the undercard on Fox, let's say, and then they'll show the main event on pay-per-view. Like, if I'm paying $75, give me the whole thing, or $99 or whatever. You know, don't give me half of it on free TV, and then, you know, and I understand what they're trying to say is like, we're going to get you in a boxing mode, and then you're going to buy it tonight, right? I get that, but I don't like it. Oh, all right, and John, I've got one last thought that came in the middle of what Charles was saying. We were talking about having a fight at Wembley or O2 or whatever, and we got fights at Carson. We've got fights in Barclays at Madison Square Garden. Are all the venues or the venues that we're used to getting these big fights in now, have we run into generic cookie cutter 1970s veteran stadium in Philadelphia kind of stuff? Do the venues have any more to give to the fight? When they said, live from Caesar's Palace, that meant something. I don't know if live from Barclays means as much.
Well, yeah, I got to say this too about fans. See, boxing and all sports, we got to have fans. I mean,
Right.
I put a video on my Facebook page where it's Ali and Frazier, and when you hit play, the first thing you hear is you hear all the fans, right? And then in this corner, I mean, that was what generated so much excitement about sports, not just boxing. We got to have the fans. Sure, we've gotten used to it and we've adapted. But and then from a fighter's point of view, how many of them said it's weird? They feed off the fans. Now, I don't know. One of my best memories in a very, 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 very minor league is playing basketball before like 2,000 people in a pretty big game. And I could forget everything else, but I could still hear the roar. I stole the ball from the guard, and I could hear the from 2,000 people. When you got 90,000 people, 100,000 people cheering,
right?
I mean, it makes you get excited. So we got to have that. The venues, I still think Madison Square Garden still makes anybody who, you don't even have to know boxing history. Most people have heard of Madison Square Garden. Right. Barclays has become a big deal. I think, you might be right about that, but Vegas is really the place. Vegas, the MGM Grand Garden Arena, where that happened behind Charles, and we were both there. Of course, damn it. But I think it depends on the arenas. I think some can be borderline iconic, but again, it's the way it's presented now. The boxing isn't presented like it was. Here I go again, the old curmudgeon. Can't help it, but I think I'm right. It's not presented like it was back in our day, where it was really a huge event. And Charles made the best point of the show. The undercards, so important. And that's where an Aram again going, nobody cares about the undercards.
Right.
What a stupid thing to say again.
Right.
You ought to care about the undercards, buddy. That's how you build a fan base. So, crowds are important, but the promoters, I'll just say this. I think Eddie Hearn, who has a lot of people who hate him and a lot of people who like him, I think he gets it. I think he understands what to do. Maybe it's not because he's just younger. Aram has been around as long as God, right? As long as old as dirt and all those old cliches. He should know everything, but I think he's a grouch, and he doesn't want to be taken off his perch a little bit, so he just growls at somebody. But it's a different time now, Bob. Different time, man. You got to do some different. You got to adapt with the times, and I think that's why Eddie Hearn and the guys in England do a better job. I mean, do they have any problem promoting fights? No. What does that say? So that's all.
Well, back in my day, when you spent $3 and got a mug of sarsaparilla and a stick of Wrigley Spearmint chew, I understand what you're saying.
6 miles to get there.
6 miles in the snow to get to the venue. Yeah, but the point is, and as sports fans, this is the dilemma the fine line we always walk, is that we want what's happening now. We want Jerry World. We want Super Bowl XLLV 912. We want all the new stuff, but we want to talk about Joe Namath and raising the finger and that. We want to talk about Bob Cousy dribbling out the time. We want to talk about Jack Dempsey. We want both things. And I think what we're getting is we're falling away from what made us fall in love with the sport. And again, as we were talking about, too many belts, too many weight classes, this and that, not fighting, not being active. You have champions that now are 13-0. That didn't happen before. You didn't get a title shot until you at least fought 50 fights. And you were 50-9 at that point. You didn't just walk out and go, I want a title shot.
I'm here.
Yeah. But the flip side of that is you have guys out there that are fresh with a title, as opposed to having been in 59 fights. And by the time they get the title, they're ready to keel over because they're, 36 or 34 years old and been beat up for the last 10, 12 years. So there's always that fine line to walk. But as we said, we're dealing with, again, it ends up being Bob Barron bashing day, and it always ends up being that. And I'm sorry for that, folks, but that's the way it kind of works. He appears to be the one in the middle of the mix, getting things out of whack. Not just him, I get that, but that's where it ends up. The buck always falls there for some odd reason. So I guess in conclusion, what I'm trying to say is that we're doing okay. We're going to come out of the pandemic with boxing. And believe me, I thought that we might not for a while there, because it was just looked like it was tough to do. They've taken or they've acted on some of the suggestions that we had, not on our suggestion, but doing some of the things that we were talking about, right? They listened to me, goddammit. Yeah. That's not the way. Yeah.
Listen to Charles.
Do it Charles's way, right?
Yeah.
But there are some things that are working. And I think it's a positive thing, but there's still a ways to go. So I don't know. That's my little soapbox for no reason whatsoever. So
let me add one thing. See, just out of the top of my head, Shakur Stevenson versus Gary Russell Jr.
Sure.
Well,
it's about time on the 3-year calendar for Gary Russell Jr. to pop his head out. It's Gary Russell Jr. Day, Groundhog Day. It's about time for him to pop his head out, and waiting there should be Shakur Stevenson. Yeah.
But the point is, we need good fights. That's what I'm saying. Good between good fighters. It's not even a win or lose thing. It's just what helps boxing. That's the point.
And something that Charles mentioned that's very important. We also need good undercards.
Right.
And it could be a guy that's 5-1 against a guy that's 4-8. I don't care about that. I care about, are they ready to fight? Are they in shape? Is this what they do? And whether we ever hear from them again or not, that's irrelevant. But it's got to be a good show.
Real fast, what's really funny is, when I watch fights from England, I watch all the fights they show. And they will have good matchups, and then they'll have matchups. They'll look at Boxing Rec, and the one guy always in the other corner. They always have the supposed already it's almost predetermined loser on the other corner. The guy will be 6-0 with 4 knockouts, and he'll be fighting a guy who's 8 wins and 99 losses.
Right.
And I'm thinking, now how is this a good fight? The point is that's how they build a guy's record up. That's how they do it. And that's been going on for years and years. Doesn't make it right, but people don't really complain about it. And I've never understood that. In California, you can ask Andy Foster, you can't book a guy 8-99 against a 5-0 guy because he won't okay it. But for them, it seems to work because they mix it. They have that, then they have a really good fight. So there you go.
But it's like Charles said, why don't we get an Erickson Lubin in an undercard? What are we waiting on?
Harrison, Hurd, Arisandi, Lara.
Right. Why don't we? These guys want to fight, and they've proven that either they belong at that level or they're rising to that level. And why don't we see their fights ever? Arisandi, we only see him when he's about to lose a title fight that he took on short notice.
Mm-hmm.
Where else? Why doesn't he fight? Or why don't we see him on the undercard of a fight when it's a competitive fight? Because he's a pro. You know what you're going to get from him.
Totally.
Remember when we'd see Sam Solomon pop up every now and then. You go, great fight. Too bad they put him in with somebody he's going to lose to. You couldn't match him up with someone to make a great fight for Sam Solomon. Action. That's what I want to see. So, Charles, on the way out the door, what is your boxing reform du jour?
Well, I think part of it is, as we said, talking about the undercards, but why not use that as a stepping stone, right? So everybody's not in the top tier of the 10 greatest fighters right now of all time. So there's a ranking. So you have these rankings. So why not have number 3 versus 6? Again, I would love to have that boxing tournament in the different divisions. But if you can't get that, then let's have it mixed up with, you mentioned Gary Russell Jr. I'm trying to think of my guy that just got beat by Davis. help me out. My buddy that just got pulverized by
Who was it? I didn't hear you. What was that?
my buddy that just got pulverized by Gervonta Davis.
Oh, Leo Santa Cruz.
Right. Why not now? Leo Santa Cruz versus Gary Russell Jr. That too.
You've been wanting that one for years.
Right. So those are fights now because Gary Russell Jr. probably clearly thinks that's an easy fight for him now. So, but how?
I deal with Frampton Santa Cruz at 3.
Right. But the point of it is with all these young guys at 130, 135, and all this going on at 140, and even at the junior middleweights and all that, you have enough fighters in between on those rankings that you could build top-notch undercards and put those out there for pay-per-view so people could watch them. And then that way you're building up for your next fight. You could literally, based on results, schedule your next fight for the next 2 years.
Right.
Based on the results.
Right.
You win this, or he lost, now we're going to put him in here. He's going to fight this guy. You can just go through the whole thing, and people will come back because they get more bang for their buck, more entertainment for their money, stuff that matters, quality fighters. But if I still want to go watch Tyson versus Douglas 2, I'll watch that on pay-per-view, like UFC. I'll watch that. But I want to stay connected with the core of boxing, the real boxing, because you're providing me with can't miss fights. There is a reason why people are like, man, Tyson fighting. I got to watch that fight. I don't care how to watch it. I don't have the means to watch it. My buddy has it. He's buying it. I'm going to drop him $20. We're going to watch the fight, have a party. That's how boxing goes. But you have to continue to improve on the product, which you can do with the undercards, and make it such a fabulous show that people go, damn, I either got to be there. And let's be real. As much as they say, as I get off of this, boxing is dying. You put up a great fight. And there's no pandemic, people are running to Las Vegas.
Right.
And they got to be there, or they got to be, when you see people
will come.
That people can't,
the people will come.
People come to Vegas knowing they can't get into the fight, buy $100 ticket to watch it in a venue on the screen just to say they were in Vegas.
Yeah.
That happens all the time, and they sell out. So create the talent, create the show, and they will come. Always in boxing.
John? Well, I think we get to the point where we say, let's roll. I mean, we've got it going. We just need to get it going better. And as you said, why couldn't we run back Santa Cruz Frampton 3? Why couldn't we do this? Why couldn't we do that? You can. And you hit on something that's very important. And I'll get off of this in a second. You hit on something that's very important. You've got rankings for 4 sanctioning bodies for 120 some weight divisions. You can't get number 2 in the WBA to fight number 6 in the IBF. You can't get number 3 in the WBC to fight number 12 in the WBC. And if you throw that ranking up there at me, even though we may not believe in the ranking and that thing, you throw that rank, oh, he's a 3rd seed. Ooh, it's like watching an NCAA tournament or Wimbledon. He's seeded. Wow, he must be a much better player than an unseeded player. And I'll follow that more. So if you throw a card at me that's got, title fight for the middleweights, and then I've got the number 3 IBF lightweight versus the number 7 WBC lightweight, and then I've got the flyweights number 2 against number 3 in the WBA. I'm more apt to be into that. College football rankings just came out. Why? I have no idea. We know where it's going to go, but we watch the show and go, yeah, my team's still ranked. Oh, my team's not still ranked. My team should be ranked higher. That's what we do. I'm a list guy myself. So if we have that going on, add that to it, and now you've got an undercard to go, well, this is loaded, as opposed to guys we never heard of. Now we've heard of them because it's loaded. So, all right, John. I noticed something about the book that the last recommendation from the book. Give if you can remember a little bit of the quote for the last recommendation of the book that was on Facebook. I thought it was an interesting quote. if you can recall.
Oh, from Dave Wilcox, his dudes. Fitch and Raspani, yeah. I don't remember exactly the quote, except that he said he was going to read it again, which was very nice of him. And it's a few more rounds. It's on Amazon, and I don't remember the middle part, but I do remember him saying his dudes, and you remember it better than me, Frank. What are you referring to?
Well, that's basically it. I didn't commit the whole thing to memory, so I thought.
Oh, okay, yeah. You would think I would, right? But I just posted
but
on
it
Facebook.
happens so often,
Yeah, that's another great review. I'm gonna say.
And Charles, I'm going to ask this question because I already know the answer to it. But how many of these fights, like the Mayweather and the Ghost fight, how many of these fights do you think you've covered here in Las Vegas?
That's wow. Let's just say this. I'm not sure. It's maybe I know it's over 50 easy.
Okay.
More. And the reason why I know that is because Mayweather 9 times in person. 9 times. And that the first one was the De La Hoya fight.
Okay.
So probably close to 50 maybe.
Okay. Well, because I asked that because we're talking about building cards. I'm looking at this Mayweather versus Guerrero, and then we've got, and I can see out around your head, Ponce de Leon versus Abner Mares. Yeah. And I'm not sure what the other ones were because I can't read the whole thing. But again, these weren't cupcake fights.
Nope.
Daniel Ponce de Leon that was always a good fight. And Abner Mares, if you've never seen Abner Mares fight,
always came
you don't deserve to watch any more boxing in your life. But those kind of promotions, it wasn't just the headline, obviously. The headliners, obviously. But that's how you build a card. And when you come to Vegas for that, that's how you build a card. And that's what we've been talking about. To get us back into boxing and to draw more people into boxing, the ability to build a card is out there. Excuse me. It ain't going to be cheap. It's not going to be easy. But make it an experience. We've already talked about that we're kind of running off of it's got to be a certain day thing now. We can play on Friday night. We can play on Saturday night. We can play during the middle of the Super Bowl. We don't care at this point because you're drawing maybe the same audience or different audience, or it's on pay-per-view, or it's on a podcast, or it's this or that. Just go ahead and get the event out there, and we'll watch it when we need to watch it. Keep your ads going. That's fine. But I think we need to do a better job, or they need to do a better job of piecing things together. And I noticed that right there. It's like, okay, we're good. So, all right, what else is going on with Mr. Farmer? And we'll get the heck out of Dodge here.
Doing the regular things, realityofsports.com, trying to move that along. Also doing the Goon Squad Sports radio show, along with this lovely show, trying to get more people engaged and involved.
Ding.
Check us out. We're getting it done. And 2, if you like alcohol, no, I'm just playing. If you like a good cognac, check out RayonCognacXO.com. But trying to live the dream, man. Get through this whole madness and keep doing some great shows. That's all we can do.
Well, on this end, just plugging away, USN, Ultimate Sports Network. I'm also, I guess, a regular now until they realize what I'm doing on the Sports Crib. It is now on Yardstream or Facebook Live or something like that. Yeah, I haven't figured out where they're going to find us yet, but I'm one of the guys that's on there. So I wasn't on that much last week because my internet got kicked out. But now it's a live streaming thing. So
that's why you grew the goatee, right, Frank? So you look pretty cool here to join the goatee club, right? Right.
That was partly that, and
you look a little different now with that goatee.
Yeah, I didn't feel like I'm rationing my razors as well. So
you look like you're going. Don't go Hollywood, Frank. Don't go Hollywood on me now. I don't want to see a big like a wig on your head next time I see you or anything.
I'm gonna have my hair dye and that's entirely. Yeah.
None of that, Frank.
Gorgeous Giles. That's you can call me that afterwards. But,
oh
all right. And on that note,
one last thing before we go. I'd pay you $100 if you wear a wig on the thing.
Now, there was
Thinking about
a
it.
New
Like,
Year's.
he's thinking about it.
No, I'm going to mention, because he's partly to blame for this one, I think. There was a New Year's Eve thing, and that's another story, Tyler. Anyway.
But here's the stipulation. You got to wear the wig I want you to wear. It had to be something like a Little Richard or something like that. Not a little greasy kind of Prince or Ready for the World wig. I need a slick back, Little Richard type thing.
Oh yeah, the full hair, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Then you might get a sponsor for that.
That's right, Frank. You look dynamic with slick back black hair.
Oh, Sheila. Okay. All right. And on that note, bye-bye all.